alamin. Wassalatu wassalamu ala asrafil anbiya'i wal mursalin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. In the name of Allah, the most compassionate, the most merciful, all praise and thanks to Allah only, the Lord of the world. And may peace and blessing of Allah be upon our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And let us pray that one day, inshallah, that we will be reunited with our beloved Prophet, peace be upon him. Good evening and welcome everyone to Imam Center special lecture and discussion tonight. My name is Nadia, and it's a privilege for me to be the moderator of tonight's discussion. And the topic of tonight's lecture will be inclusive, diverse, and woman-friendly mosque. And we have the honor here of having our sister Nadia Hasan, MBA, who will share her point of view and expertise on the subject. I'd like to read a little bit about Sister Nadia. So Sister Nadia has an MBA from Bentley University School of Business. She previously served as the Government and Interfaith Program Coordinator for ISNA, Islamic Society of North America, and she continues to collaborate with numerous interfaith and government coalitions on the Hill. Prior to joining ISNA, she mobilized more than 500 people to a peaceful, silent counter-protest outside of the Villa Park City Hall chambers after a heinous anti-Muslim protest shocked the city of Yorba Linda, all of that with the support of Muslim community. Nadia's personal experience with Islamophobia has allowed her to redirect her talents toward writing, education, public speaking, and empowering of women and youth in her community. And Nadia also mentors Muslim youth, advocates for underserved women and victims of domestic violence, and firmly speaks out against bigotry, injustice, and religious intolerance. And recently, she also co-founded the Youth Leadership Institute, an organization that offers comprehensive training and mentorship for high school students. So, a little bit about tonight's topic. It is very relevant for all of us. Alhamdulillah, this Imam Center, we've used this for almost 1.5 years now. And as you can see that we also have not only men, but women, youth, children, of attendance and be part of the Imam Center. And the Prophet, peace be upon him, narrated by Muslim in the hadith that do not prevent the female servant of Allah from the Masjid of Allah. And also there's another hadith saying by Al-Bukhari and Muslim, allow the woman to attend the masjid at night. So mashallah. This is great, and the question is, has the woman been inclusive in the masjid? Has this masjid been diverse to all the part of the community? Maybe I'd like also to read a little bit about the joint statement provided by ISNA, the Islamic Society of North America, on the inclusion of women in the masjid. That is to uphold and realize the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam idea of masjid being open and inclusive of women. 3 points that was mentioned in the joint statement. The first one, that women are welcome as an integral part of the masjid. Second, women have a prayer space in the musalla behind the men. And third, women actively participate in the decision-making process of the masjid. And they are also in the governing body of masjid. One of the essential points of inclusivity of women is that it's not only welcoming them in masjid, but also ensuring that their experience at the masjid must be uplifting. So let me review until what time do we have? At 9 o'clock? Okay, so we will have like about until 8 o'clock for the lecture, and then after that we could have like a question and answer. Okay, okay, and without further ado, we'd like to give Sister Nadia the floor.
Thank you so much, Sister Ina. First, I'd like to start out by thanking the Imam Center, the president of the Imam Center, Brother Among, and the entire Indonesian community for inviting me to be with you this evening. It's truly an honor to be with you. It's not my first time coming to the Imam Center. Actually, I very much enjoyed the many programs that this masjid holds. Most recently, we had an Imam Rabbi Summit here, and we had about 100 rabbis and imams come together for dialogue and understanding and coming together to see what type of programs the imams and the rabbis can work together, and the Imam Center was very gracious in hosting that program, so we thank them for their continued dedication towards having greater interfaith understanding. And I'm very grateful to be able to work with the Imam Center. So I'm also thankful to be able to have this opportunity to have this conversation. This is an issue, so the title, like Sister Ina graciously, thank you for that gracious introduction, mentioned the title is Inclusivity, Diversity, and Women-Friendly Mosques. So I'm very much thankful for being able to have this conversation because it is an issue in our community, in the Ummah. But as much as I am thankful for being able to have the conversation, the fact that we have to have the conversation is problematic. And the reason why it's problematic is because there's an issue. So why is there an issue? There's an issue because we, as a community, collectively, have moved away from practicing the Quran and the messages and the teachings and the traditions of the Quran and the Sunnah. Okay? So if we look back 1400 years ago to the community that Prophet Muhammad ﷺ built, right? What do we see? What do we find? We find a very inclusive, multiracial, interreligious, multicultural, intergenerational or multi-generational, inclusive, environmentally friendly community. But when we look around today, 1400 years later, we don't see the same dynamics. We don't see the same, our community doesn't look the same. It's not as healthy, it's not as robust, right? So the question that I want to pose to everybody is why? What happened? What happened that here we are 1400 years later, we have the Quran. The Quran hasn't gone anywhere, right? We still have the same Quran, right? We have the words of Allah. We have the teachings, the verses, the ayat. We have amazing scholars in our community, but why do we have this issue of division in our community? Why do we refer to this masjid as the Arab masjid? Why do we refer to that masjid as the Pakistani masjid? Why do we refer to this masjid as the Indonesian masjid? Or that masjid as the African American masjid? Or that masjid as the Sunni masjid? Or that masjid as the Shia masjid? Or that masjid as the Ahmadiyya masjid? Whatever the case may be, why are we not referring to our masajid as the Muslim masjid, or the human masjid, or the masjid of our ummah, or masjid of humanity? Because the communities that, or the community that Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was building for all of humanity. The masjid was for all of humanity. The Quran did not come to Muslims, right? Because during that time, were there any Muslims? There was Prophet Muhammad and Khadija, maybe. No, the Quran came to who? It came to speak to all of humanity. So what we've done with the message, we've actually, over the years and the centuries, have changed the message and we've changed the practice. And unfortunately, our cultures have trumped our religious understanding and interpretation. And so we've moved away, and then now here we are, and unfortunately, in the United States, we're living in a very heightened Islamophobic environment. And rather than us come together, to stand together, and to do something to push back against the anti-Muslim rhetoric, and the vitriol and the hatred that's coming out, we're too busy being divided, we're too busy being in our own, it's like, okay, we're here and you're there, and the whole thing of othering, whenever you have the mentality that we are this and then there's another group that's something else, you have the othering, there's division. And then it's very easy for, the hate groups to come in and divide us even further. And then that only weakens our community, it weakens our status, it weakens our ability to be able to collectively come together and show the true colors of what Islam really is about. I mean, how else are we going to do our da'wah if we're not together and showing the best colors of Islam out in public and in the community? Then how else are other people going to know about us? How are they going to know about our deen? How are they going to know about the beauty of Islam? How will they ever taste the sweetness of the faith that we have? No one will know because we're too busy just being divided and doing our own thing. So for whatever reason, here we are now, and what I want to do is I really want to have like an informal conversation about what we can do to overcome the challenges and to overcome the issues. And I just want to highlight kind of like some main areas of what I see is the issue. Within the mosques, youth, converts, African Americans, Latinos, and women don't feel welcome in the mosques. And I'm not speaking of one particular mosque, I'm talking about mosques across the country, from the West Coast to the East Coast. And I've lived on both coasts, and I've traveled everywhere in between, and it's the same complaint. It's the same, why do we women have to come in through a side entrance? Why do we have to pray behind a curtain? Why can't we see the imam? Why can't, if God forbid, if the sound system goes out, that's it, the khutbah's lost. They can't hear, they can't, I remember one time walking into a masjid with my husband, and it was, there was no separate entrance for the women. We actually walked in together, and I was like, wow, I think this is the first time we walked into a mosque together in the same entrance, because it's not really an issue, but just, it's very, let me back up and say this. A lot of these issues about women having to go through side entrances and praying behind a curtain and not having adequate spaces and not having this great experience, a lot of times it's an underlying issue. It might not be like the reason why they are not having a good experience in the mosque. There might be other reasons beneath the surface that are not being talked about, but it comes out in these ways. So, it's no secret that women, in the world, it's not only within the Muslim community, but women in the world are marginalized. A lot of times in different parts of the world, they're treated as second-class citizens. There's violence within the Muslim community against women and outside of the Muslim community against women. And so because of that, because of their feeling marginalized in the home, feeling marginalized in the workplace, feeling marginalized in the masjid, and feeling just in general not having the status, and now I'm going to refer back to our community, having the status that Rasulullah ﷺ gave to the women in his community and the status that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks to us about in the Quran. Because of that, you're going to hear, or we've been hearing, complaints about all these, physical barriers and not having adequate prayer spaces. So again, I don't want to emphasize that these are the most important things, curtains and spaces and all that, but a lot of times it's a more nuanced conversation, and there are other issues beneath the surface, perhaps, that are not coming to the surface. And these issues need to be raised up. The women's voices need to be elevated in the masjid, and we need to have this conversation. It is deeply important to the health of our women, because they are the mothers who are raising our children. And if our women and the mothers and the wives are not in a healthy, mentally strong, physically strong, spiritually strong, it's going to affect our youth. It's going to affect the children. It's going to affect the next generation. And so, when it comes to the issues of women, when I look back and I read the seerah and I read, the status and how women were treated during the Advent, or not, just during how women flocked to Islam because of the rights that they were given. Today, I feel that women are not enjoying that same status. So when people ask me, outside of the Muslim community, are women equal to men, or are women treated equal to men in the Muslim faith? Now, the status that women have in Islam is very different than how women are treated in Islam. So when I respond to the status question, I say, actually, no, women are not equal to men. Women have a much more favorable status than men. Because in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says what? He says that men are the maintainers of women, right? So when my husband works, his money is mine, and when I work, my money is mine. So he's responsible for me, he's responsible for my children, he's responsible for the household. I don't have to pay for anything. In addition to, all the other rights that women were given, inheritance, the right to own property, we have the right to vote, we have the right to choose our spouses. And this is something that I feel is not emphasized enough from the pulpit, that women have the freedom to choose, just to choose their spouses, to choose whatever path they want to take, whether it comes, to their study, whether they want to be a doctor or not be a doctor, whether they want to work or not work, whether they want to, whatever. This is something that's very fundamental in our faith: freedom of choice, freedom of will. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't want us to do anything unless it's out of our own free will. And I think for me, one of the most profound verses in the Quran, La ikraha fid din, there is no compulsion in religion. And that goes for women too. So you cannot force women to, and I'm not talking about young children when we're just teaching them, but when they become of age, you cannot force women to do anything. And this is a cultural practice that we see in different parts of the world, not so much here in the US, but overseas and back home, where women are forced, to either marry or do hard labor, or whatever the case may be. So this is very fundamental to our faith, that we cannot force our women to do anything. We can't even force them to wear hijab. And Allah does not want us to do something if we're forced to do. Because imagine if I'm being forced to pray. What quality does my prayer have if someone is forcing me to pray? Or what quality does my modest dress have if someone is forcing me to dress a certain way? Or what quality is my fasting have if someone is forcing me to fast? I mean, it has to be something from our own, and that's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from us. He wants that relationship, that individual relationship, and it goes the same for men and for women. And the Quran is very clear about addressing men and women. When he addresses men in the Quran, he addresses women. So he says, and believing men and believing women, chaste men and chaste women, reverent men and reverent women. And there are so many verses where he believing men, believing women, obedient men and obedient women, truthful men and truthful women. So the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, throughout the Quran, the theme is He addresses both gender equally. And Allah says, I have created men and women equal. There is no difference between men and women, except the only difference is by what's in the heart, piety. That's the only difference. Now, we may have different roles in society, of course, but when it comes to men and women and the status of men and women, in the eyes of Allah, it's the same. So, I don't know how many of you have heard about the women's mosque in America that was really recently started up, and I received a number of posts on Facebook asking, do you feel that the Women's Mosque of America is a solution to the problem of not having women-friendly mosques? So my response was, well, no, it's not a solution. However, I understand why the women felt the need to start a mosque, have their own mosque, and have khutbahs there, because it's in response to this whole unmosqued phenomenon. If you've heard of the unmosqued phenomenon, where women, they just don't feel welcome, they don't feel included, they don't feel like they're represented in the masjid. So they went off and they started their own mosque. Now, is it a solution? No. However, I want to mention, or I want to take note here that, women coming together and praying and doing halaqas is not a new phenomenon. Women during the Prophet's time, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, used to gather. They used to pray together. They used to have study groups. Even today, in China, they have women's mosques. And I think even in Indonesia, they probably have women's mosques. But I want you to take note that the reason why this mosque started in Los Angeles is for a very different reason. It's not the same reason as to why perhaps the mosque in China was founded, okay? So here, women were not feeling included. It was not, they were really disgruntled. They didn't know what else to do. And they're like, okay, we're fed up with this, and we're going to start our own mosque. Now, is it a solution to the problem? It's not a solution. So, but what do we do about it? Is the question, is what do we do about it? We need to do something about it. Now, had it been started for a different reason, I would say it's totally fine. It's great that women gather and pray together and study and do what they do. But that's not the reason why this mosque was started. This mosque was started because of the unfriendly women mosques. Similarly, youth are having the same issue. Our masajid to the youth have become completely irrelevant. Our children don't want to come to the masjid. Every time we tell them, oh, okay, and I'm not only speaking for my child. Actually, I haven't had an issue with my child. My daughter likes to come to the masjid. But whenever I talk to parents, they're like, oh, it's so hard to get our children to come to the masjid. They don't want to come, for this reason, that reason. Well, again, it's, the youth are not being given an opportunity to participate and be contributing members of the mosque. So if you don't have something for the youth to do, if you don't have activities, if you don't have something for them to feel that they have a sense of purpose there, then they're not going to want to come to the mosque. Which is very different from so I grew up in California, and back then, I'm not going to tell you guys how old I am, but I'm old. But we only had two mosques in California. We had the Vermont Mosque, which was led by Dr. Maher Hatkout and Dr. Hasan Hatkout, if you guys know him. And we had the Garden Grove Mosque, which was led by Dr. Muzammil Siddiqui. And those were the two mosques that I grew up. between. And we really genuinely liked going to the mosque because they had all kinds of programs. They used to take us camping. They used to bring us together. They actually used to listen to us. They used to ask us, what are our interests? What is it that is important to you? What would you like to do? Where today, I don't know, again, I'm new to the East Coast, so I may not be completely familiar with the landscape out here, but I don't see a lot of programming here for youth, and perhaps there are, I don't know. But this is kind of like my upbringing, and so but I do see that we are, statistically, I know there's been a lot of polls that, and you probably could speak to this more than I, but there's been a lot of polls that have been taken, and in general, it's not only the Muslim youth, but in general, youth today across all faith groups, we are losing our youths to our houses of worship. They're not wanting to come to the mosque or to their churches and their synagogues. So there's something there that's going on. I would say that within our community, one of the issues that we have is that the leadership is not making space for cultivating leadership in our youth. It's not passing the baton on, and we really need to spend time on doing this. But again, we have the problem if the mothers, right? If the mothers of these children and the youth don't feel welcome in the mosque, what do you think the youth and their children are going to feel? Do you think they're going to want to come to the mosque? So it's a double-edged sword. I mean, before we welcome the youth, I think we need to welcome the mothers, right? We need to get the women in here. So, and all of these issues are interrelated, really. I mean, I feel that if you solve one, issue, you're going to solve, all of the issues. The other thing is diversity. And this is a huge one, because I do a good amount of work within the Latino community, and we have an influx of Latino Muslims who are accepting Islam, but within a short period of time, they're leaving Islam. Guess why? Because we are not making them feel comfortable in the mosques. So I did a talk show with some of the scholars, and we were talking about converts and how many converts come in and how many converts leave. And I had asked the audience, how many of you are aware that, because we get all excited when someone accepts Islam, everyone's in the masjid going, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, but not realizing that, okay, the celebration for those few moments or for those few seconds, I mean, this is a process. These people are coming in, they don't know anything. So it's kind of like we welcome them, we hug them at the inaugural, ceremony, but then we leave them. We don't support them through the process. I mean, many of us are fortunate to be born into Muslim families, but imagine how difficult it is for these people oftentimes who are not being accepted by their own families because they've left their religion, whatever it is, whether it's Christianity or Catholicism or Judaism. They're coming in, so they're having it bad from both sides. They're not being accepted by the Muslim community, and then their families are turning their backs on them. So this is something that we, as a community, are going to be held accountable for not welcoming them in, for not holding their hands through the process and helping them and teaching them until they can, kind of get into the flow and really get a grasp. I mean, that's, again, I reflect back to the Prophet ﷺ and the community he was building, and every time someone took Shahada and came into the Deen, they became part of the family. It was not only a community, it was a family, right? And we need to do the same thing with our African American brothers, with our Latino brothers and sisters, with whoever, anybody who accepts Islam comes in. We need to make them part of our family, and we need to make them feel comfortable. We need to invite them to not only to our masajid, but also to our homes. So back to the youth don't want to come to the masjid because we're not making space for them. And what did Rasulullah ﷺ do when he was building the community? If you looked, he had someone of every demographic representing different parts of his cabinet, if you want to call it. He had young, he had old, he had women, right? He had youth, he had people from different tribes. Everybody coming together to contribute to making the community, the ummah, strong. And that's really where our strength comes from. Our strength is in our unity, diverse unity. So, I'm trying to think what else I haven't covered. I really want to give time to, and another thing, our mosques, again, shouldn't only just be open to the Muslim community. Our doors should be open to everyone, right? Anyone that wants to come should be able to come. And how many of you have heard of the delegation of Najran? How many know the story? Delegation of Najran? Okay, so there was a delegation that came from a Christian town, and they were coming to visit Rasulullah ﷺ. It was a Christian delegation. They came to the Prophet, and the Prophet opened the masjid. This was in Medina, and they stayed for 3 days, and they worshipped. They worshipped Jesus, and they believed in the Trinity. It's not like he allowed them to worship as they will. They ate, they slept, they stayed, right? And after 3 days, they left. So it's not that, someone asked me, is it permissible to pray in a church? And so for me, I pray anywhere, because Allah says the entire earth is made for us to worship, right? This is an example of how tolerant Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and the early Muslims were of everybody, irrespective of who they were, irrespective of whether they, had a different belief, where they came from. And we have to stop this thinking that, oh, we're Muslim, we're the, chosen people, we're the only ones going to be in heaven. We need to go back to our Quran, open up the book, and we need to see what lessons we've missed. Because I hear so many things in our community, and sometimes I wonder, I say, well, the verse, you're saying this, that these people are going to be in the hellfire, but that's not what this Quran says. This Quran doesn't say that. Just because you're Muslim, we don't have an open highway, to heaven, that's it. No, that's not how it works. We need to change, we need to shift our mindsets, we need to shift our thinking away from that we're right and everybody else is wrong. Because when you think of it, and I talk about this in the interfaith community, and especially amongst my Christian brothers and sisters, how they think that's it. Once you accept Jesus, that's it. You're saved and you go to heaven. And I've had many dialogues with them, and we've kind of adopted that thinking. We've kind of taken that on. That, oh no, we're Muslim. We've got the truth. Well, Allahu A'lam, it's not for us to point the finger. It's not for us to say who's going to heaven, who's going to hell. It's for us to practice the messages and the guidance of Rasulullah and leave God's job to Him. God knows what He's doing. Allah knows what He's doing. Trust me. So I think I'm going to stop here and allow time for question and answer. But the one thing that I just want to close with is that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made it very clear about the gender equity that He's given to men and women. He's made it very clear through the seerah of Prophet Muhammad, how there is no superiority of a black or a white over a black, or a black over a white. And what is most important is the taqwa in our hearts and the goodness, and how we are supposed to love for our brother what we love for ourselves, right? And it wasn't really until I understood the hadith of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ that none of us will enter Jannah until we believe. And none of us will believe until we love one another. And that love is not in words. Love is a verb, and it's actually an action. So if you can't show your love in action, then I don't know, it's lip service, right? And then Prophet Muhammad also said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you will never have true belief. Now he's talking about the essence, the real quality of our belief, until you can love for your brother what you love for yourself. So I just want to close with that.
Thank you very much, Sister Nadia. I think some of the takeaways that we can get from the conversation is that Quran said that men and women are equal. They are in the same level, but they just have different functions. And I think that's, if I'm not mistaken, that's in Surah Al-Baqarah. And I think going back to like one of the issues like across America in the mosque is that the issues that women, youth, and also people who are like in the other community, the mosque is not diversified enough. Some of the women, they feel marginalized. They are not. They don't feel welcome, and I think those are some of the issues that we've seen today, and which raise the question: is it culturally? Is it the perception? Is it the way people are raised? What are the issues? And I think I'm going to open the floor with this, and to see like if sisters or brothers, if you have thoughts on how we can overcome these challenges and how we could see the future and how we can improve the process for all of us so that the mosque could be part of us and we could all feel welcome. Maybe I'll open the first session with 3 questions. 1, 2, there's no... And one brother? Okay. Maybe if you could state your name and then your question.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Sri Rashida Salat. I didn't ask for the question, but I want to tell you my experience. I used to be a foreign service employee. Then I've been in many countries in the world. Anytime I got assignment in another country, I always number 1 to meet the Imam, the leader of Muslim. And then when I was in India, I was not allowed to pray in the mosque. So when I asked them why, and then I told them that because women and men are equal. Not in India. Women are not allowed to pray in the mosque. Why? Because this is our culture. That is not right. So I was angry at the time. Then after that, when I was in Ukraine also, the Imam was from Lebanon. He was very good Imam. And then, yes, the same also. But the Imam let the woman pray in the mosque. And then, after I studied and observed what's wrong, why the Muslims separate with 73 organizations, it is because the Ustad or Imam taught the wrong Islam. For example, my Indonesian friend, after she come back from Saudi Arabia, and she didn't want to enter to my house because there is a little the picture, the painting with the cross on the top. I didn't want to enter to your house. Why? Because there's a little cross on the building, in the painting. So after that, the Indonesian woman in Ukraine and the Nigerian woman in United States, when I invited them to have dinner in my house, they asked me, is there any Christian? Is there any non-Muslim? So what? I invited you, I want you to make a good friend with any kind of religion. Oh, no, they said. Our imam, our teacher, is also teacher didn't allow us to enter to the house where you invited the non-Muslim. This is the problem in the world. Why Muslim divided with many different, because the many ustad and imam, they want people respect them. If they didn't do what they want, they will curse. I hope all the leader of Muslim help them. Thank you.
So, if I would like to get as many questions as possible, so if you could please go straight to the point to the question and then limit your question to 2.
Hi, my name is Arsvita Samya. So my question is it preferable for women to pray in the mosque or in the house? And also, like, compared to if we pray in the mosque, it means that we pray together with all the males, and so we have like is it count as 27 deeds, right? But if we pray in the house, even in ourselves, I always thought when I was little that it is more preferable instead of going to the mosque, and that's why I think it makes sense that the space in the mosque is so small for women. Also, like they have the curtain. It makes sense if it is more preferable for women to pray in the mosque. So what do you think about that? And also, like I think that's all for now. Maybe later on.
So,
from the brothers.
Do you want me to answer those first?
Maybe.
Okay.
All the questions and then
Assalamualaikum. My name is Eko Prasetyawan. I'm asking because I'm concerned parents regarding the youth. You mentioned that we need to have a space for the youth. I guess you've been throughout visiting different communities and things like that. Do you have basically like a best practice where you see the mosque or Islamic community that would have a good youth program that you can share with us? Because I'm just trying to see what is that, because you mentioned about we need to give them a space and things like that, but I haven't seen like a real success story. If you can share that success story, that'd be good. Yeah, that's about it.
Those are great questions. Okay, so to address your question, sister, what is the preference? I would say that everybody has a different preference. I can tell you what our Prophet said, and our Prophet said, do not prevent women from going to the mosque, okay? So there's no prohibition on women coming to the mosque and praying, no prohibition on coming for Jum'ah, there's no prohibition for women, and actually, the litmus test for me is that always go back, when you want to know, should we not, is there a preference, is there not a preference, go back to the seerah of the Prophet. And what did the Prophet do at that time? What did the women do during that time? Did the women go to the mosque or did they not go to the mosque? I mean, to address what you were saying in parts of India where the women are not allowed to come, again, and I had mentioned this in my talk earlier, that those are cultural practices, right? But Islam came to undo the harmful practices and put, he didn't come to undo the culture altogether. No, they had their culture, but he came to eradicate the harmful practices that were taking place during that time. such as female infanticide. During that time, they used to bury the girls alive, right? They used to, I mean, so he came to eradicate the harmful practices, but not, I mean, because there were many good things, many great cultural practices, and he didn't say, no, stop doing this. But in regards to the prayer, the women did come to the prayer. Women did pray in the same space as the men. There was no curtain, there were no barriers. Now, the Prophet's wives, they did used to wear, they were veiled, they used to cover their faces. That was a status that was given to them and that distinguished them from the other women. And Aisha, as we know, she was, you know, Aisha radiallahu anha, the Prophet's wife, she was one of the greatest scholars in our ummah. And she narrated more hadith than anybody else narrated, right? And she used to teach both men and women, not just women. She used to teach men and women, but she used to teach from behind a veil, you know, behind a hijab. So the preference, you know, women have a preference. I'm not going to speak to all women. You know, if they have a preference to pray at home, they can well pray at home. But there's no prohibition for women coming to the mosque. Now, you mentioned the 27 blessings. That's for Jama'at prayer. So when you pray for Jama'at, when the community comes together and you pray in a Jama'at, you get more. There are more blessings in unity, and that's to create strength and brotherhood between the Muslims. So yes, there are more blessings to come together and pray, as opposed to just praying individually. You have a question? Can I answer? You have something related to this? Related to that? Okay. So the brother asked about success stories and best practices for you. So this has been a challenge again, and after much research and looking around and seeing what's available for our youth, one of the things that I got involved with was the Girl Scouts of the nation's capital. Now we have, there's 2 Girl Scout troops that I know of in the DC, Virginia area. There might be more, but I'm only aware of 2. There's the one at Adams Center at IMAAM Masjid, and mashallah, they have a very robust Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts of America, and I think they have over 400 youth that participate on a weekly basis every Friday in their scouting. And they do all kind of things. I mean, they have scouting trips and camping trips, and they do different types of journeys. Now, I'm also a troop leader, but at PGMA, the Prince George's Muslim Association, we have a troop. It's not as large as Adams, but alhamdulillah, we don't have, or actually no, I take that back, we do have boys, but it's a very small boys, but I'm with the Girl Scouts, and mashallah, we have all different ages from 5 all the way up to, is it high school, Rayana? We have high schoolers, I think? Yeah, all the way up to high school. So we have all the ages, and we do a lot of different programs with them, youth development. We take them on trips, we take them on camping trips, journeys. My daughter's currently getting certified to have her babysitting certification, and she just did she took a workshop for the science of happiness. So they do a lot of things with the Girl Scouts. Now, one of the things that this is a new initiative that I just launched. It's called Youth Leaders Institute. So I've partnered with a gentleman out of Harvard who is a motivational speaker and a youth trainer. And so what we're doing is I'm taking my experiences with the different workshops that I've done, and training workshops that I've done with the youth, and he's bringing his experience working with youth, and we're creating a new product for youth. Of course, it's not exclusive to the Muslim community, but one of the things that I want to do is I want to really focus on our community, because just like my partner, most of the trainings that I've done have been outside of the Muslim community, have been with Christian groups, Jewish groups, Sikh groups, Latter-day Saints, which is the Mormon group. So I've done a lot of trainings for youth outside the Muslim community. So now we actually just went live yesterday. The website is up, and it's YL Institute. masjidimam.com. And the great thing about this initiative is that not only are we bringing the youth together for comprehensive training, so we're going to take them like 10 hours on a Saturday. We're going to spend the whole day with them, but we're not going to just leave them after that. We're going to keep them connected in a network where these youth can collaborate and stay in communication, stay engaged with other like-minded youth, and we're really going to push them towards social entrepreneurship. Okay? And we're going to offer them webinars and mentorships and internships. We're going to connect them to resources because I feel like our youth are not getting the same opportunity as other youths from other faith communities. We're not providing that platform. We're not providing the resources and connecting them to those resources so that they can grow. And so really that should be the role of the masajid. The masajid really should be taking it on. So like I said, we're going to start partnering with the different communities. I'm hoping that maybe this could be the first community that we launch our pilot project here. So this is what, this is the new project that I'm embarking upon. And like I said, the Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts of America is a great platform where youth can be engaged. I don't know if anybody else knows of any other best practices or any other groups, but I mean, there are even, let me just say this, I do a lot of work in the interfaith community. There are interfaith groups now that, that are saying, okay, we need to move beyond just the dialogue. Because, since 9/11, we've been dialoguing and talking and trying to enhance our understanding between interfaith groups. So now what they're doing is they're bringing their youth to meet one another, and they're actually doing projects like Feed the Homeless projects. They're doing all types of different community service projects. So that would be another venue, I would say, where we can really get our youth engaged and involved in. Brother, you had a question? Comment? Okay, please.
Are you doing others first?
First of all, Sister Nadia, thank you very much for taking the time in consideration to talk. I've been, engaged with Imam for a couple of years on and off. This is the first time that I've been here to the new masjid, so it's a real pleasure to finally be here. I wanted to get your comment on something, because this has been my observation. I'd like to get your thoughts on it, and maybe for everyone here. The sense that I've gotten over the years, and I think this may impact a lot of what you've said so far, and articulated so beautifully, is the fact that part of the reason why our masajid are not always so inclusive, welcoming, and friendly oftentimes is also because we don't invest in them. And when I mean invest, I mean we don't invest in the people. We often invest in the buildings, the actual structures, but we don't invest in the Muslimin. I just want to, just some quick, since you mentioned data points, right, and whatnot, and this is what I do for a living, right? So there was something called the U.S. Mosque Report that was published 3 years ago by Hartford Seminary. And just to sort of give you an idea, here was just a couple of statements from that report. U.S. mosques are understaffed. Only 44% of imams are full-time and paid. Half of all mosques have no full-time staff. Program staff such as youth directors or outreach directors only account for 5% of staff. Okay? The median income for mosques in the United States is $70,000, and the median income for all congregations, generally Jews and Christians, $150,000. Can you give me your thoughts?
Brother, oh my God. Well, you just, I mean, I've been saying this for a long time, so yes, the community is not windows and buildings and walls. The community is made up of minds, hearts, and souls, and relationships, and connections, and everything that makes us. I mean, I get a lot of slack for saying this, but I really say we have a lot to learn from the Jewish community. I go to these churches, I get invited to speak at these mega churches. I go to the synagogues, and as soon as I walk in, the imam says, come and meet our future rabbi. They're already planning for 30 years out, and the guy's only 10 years old. I'm not kidding. When they put their strategic plans together, their strategic plans are inclusive and encompass a 50 to 100-year plan. We're not even planning 2 years out. And they're putting their money, they're putting their resources behind. We can't, and and I'm sorry to say this, I'm really, really sorry to say this, but this is a direct result of how divided we are. We don't have each other's back. We don't. We don't trust each other, and it hurts me, it pains me. It pains me to say this. Last year, and I'm going to be very, transparent here. I recently resigned from the Islamic Society of North America, and I worked there for a year. And when I went into the job, they hired me to be the government and interfaith relations coordinator on the Hill, basically to do all the government and interfaith work. And that's all great. I mean, it's wonderful that, they want to do outreach, and I think it's very important. It's important work to be able to reach out to our elected officials, to be able to have those relationships, to reach out to people of different faiths. We need to have those relationships. But those relationships do not come before the relationships I need to have with my Muslim brothers and sisters. So I said that before I have interfaith, before I do government, I need to have intra-faith. I need to have, there's no point for me to go and represent the Muslims on Capitol Hill if my Muslim brothers and sisters are not standing behind me, or next to me, or in front of me. So, I mean, it speaks volumes. We really need to start taking better care of each other.
Thank you. But, before that, I think one of the things that I'd like to pinpoint here, in our discussion, how, in terms of trying to invest in people, as the brother said, I think the question here also, if you go back to let's say Jewish community, they invest a lot in the people. I have a Jewish friend who said that she cannot go to the congregation if she and her family does not pledge $10,000 per year. That's how much they invest. $10,000 to be involved in a synagogue. So I guess it's like the question, okay, is it the egg or the chicken? Which one first? So I guess, going back to that, maybe if you could also maybe elaborate your thoughts on that, but maybe if we could have one more question.
Okay, so again, our community, we need a complete overhaul, reformation of how we are running our mosques. So the investment, there's a lot of different factors here. There's issues of trust, there's issues of leadership, who's running the mosques, there's issues of transparency. Do we even know when we give our money where the money is going? Okay? There is issues of diversity, there is issues of lack of inclusion of women, lack of inclusion of youth. It's a whole, it's not one thing, We need to start looking at our mosques and looking at, okay, how are we going to transform our places of worship to become, okay, and I use the Jewish example because, after World War II, they were on the bottom of the totem pole. They were the most, they were the most, I don't even know how to say this, marginalized, disgraced. I mean, they were just, they were, anyway. But the point is, they came together, right? What did they do? They came together, they united, right? They started working together. They started investing with each other. They started looking out for each other. It's amazing how much the Jewish community is constantly looking out for the well-being of another. They make sure, if someone in their community doesn't have a job, they will all rise to make sure that that person gets a job. Are we looking out for each other in that way? We're not. We're too much thinking about ourselves and what, and then the leadership. The leadership we need to have more transparency among the leadership. We need to be able to have that partnership between the community and the leadership. And the leadership has to be representative of the community. So if we have whatever percentage of women, whatever percentage of youth, whatever percentage of minorities, African Americans, Latinos, whatever the case may be, the leadership has to be represented. It can't be dominant, and it can't be a male-dominant leadership where nobody knows what's happening. We need to have disclosure. We need to have openness. We need to know what's going on, and we need to look out for each other. That's just a start. That's just a start.
Thank you. Maybe two more.
Okay. Nadia, assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Again, thanks for coming. Met a couple of times at the ISNA and all that. My name is Oscar Zaki. So, a few comments though. I agree with you that Adam Center have some youth program there, have some very robust youth program. Some of the things they do, I happen to live close to Adam Center, so some of the things they do is they don't judge the young people because they make some mistake and then you can't do this again. So I think we need to learn not to judge, especially the youth, and then let them learn from their mistakes. The other thing is, in Indonesia, I don't know if many of you noticed that in Indonesia, the mosque is always located at the center of the town, next to where the government center is called the Alun-Alun. And the mosque is not only for the place for prayer, it's also for the place for people to gather and do all kind of activities. I was with about 60 Indonesian youth last night, and we talked for 2 hours, and then they were staying the whole time, talking and chatting and all that. Many of them are Muslims, but when we tell them to, some of you are here, I don't know, maybe less than 10, but when we tell them to come to the mosque, then they're like, why do I have to come to the mosque? The reason, because every time there's a program at the mosque, it's always a lecture. Why can't they just come to the mosque and then do something? Maybe we can teach them computer programming, teach them robotics, do some, maybe watch Super Bowl or something. So those are some of the things that why you don't come to the mosque, because every time they come to the mosque, they have to listen to lecture. What can they? I just come to the mosque and meet friends. Adam Center's building a third phase of the mosque. The youth get involved in the planning of the mosque. They plan to have cafe at the mosque, so the youth can gather there, just talk and all that. So those are some of the things that we need to give some, again, trust to the youth. That we need to trust them for some of the things that we think they can do, but they actually know more than us. Thank you.
Actually, that's a great point, and I forgot to mention before I respond to you, in regards to investing in one another. For goodness sakes, we need to start paying our imams. Our imams sacrifice their lives for the community. They are the leaders of the mosque. They lead the prayers. They are the counselors. Anytime there's a problem, the community comes to them with all kinds of problems. And when you compare the salary of the imams to what our counterpart rabbis and priests are making, and pastors are making in their house, it's really, our imams are dying, are leaving this world, and they're broke. Where that's not the case in the Jewish community and the Christian communities. So that's another area that we can invest. We can start paying our people who work in the mosque. It's not all about volunteerism. I mean, it's great we need to get the youth involved in volunteering and getting experience, but the ones who come with experience, we need to start paying them. Equal pay for equal work. This is how we invest. And for goodness sakes, I mean, don't you think we have enough mosques now? I mean, we alhamdulillah, in the United States, I mean, I don't know, what the statistics are, how many mosques we have, but we have a lot of mosques. So instead of every time we hear that there's a mosque going to be built, we run to go invest our money because of the hadith or the Quranic verse that says, if you put a stone here or put a dollar here, God builds you a house in Jannah. Well, guess what? There's other ways to get a house in Jannah. And I just want to put a plug here because I have some friends here who are from the M&M Learning Center. They're starting a school, an Islamic school, but it's not really a school. It's more of a learning center. And if you get an opportunity to talk to this brother right here and the sister in the back, Sister Haifa, they're putting together a school that's alternative learning styles, and they're really focusing on the well-being of the students, making sure that the students are happy, making sure that the students are spiritually and emotionally in a safe and happy environment so that they can learn, their learning can flourish. So I brought them here today so that they can get connected with the Imam Center, and hopefully maybe we can do some work. But we need to, I'm not opposed, I'm not averse to building mosques. I'm just saying we have enough mosques. Let's start investing in other ventures, in other things that support our youth, that support women, that support the community. So that's just something to think about. And then, what else? Oh, you mentioned the judging. Yes, having a non-judgmental masjid or non-judgmental, that takes work. That really takes strength from the inside. We really have to make a conscious effort to not judge people, because not everybody is the same, and not everybody is in the same place where, you cannot expect somebody who just came into the deen, who's Muslim only for 1 year or 6 months, to be in the same place as someone who's been Muslim all their life. So we really need to be more tolerant, we need to be more welcoming, we need to have, an open heart and open mind. And if you see someone, who's doing something wrong, perhaps, don't just go up to them and say, hey brother, hey sister, what you're doing is not wrong. Get to know them first before you give them advice. Because you don't know, they could have taken their shahada yesterday. You don't know where people are. Everybody is in a different place, and we need to have the wisdom to understand that, if you want to bridge a relationship, you want to have a relationship with someone, but you want to help somebody do something better, you have to cultivate those relationships first. Don't come and say, criticize them, and then the person doesn't even know you. That person is not going to take the lesson from you.
Thank you. And yes.
Yes. Mr. Jamila.
Assalamu alaikum. I'm going to just share my experience and share some thinking outside of the box. I used to work for the Islamic Center, the Capital District in Albany, New York, where I raised my 2 daughters in the weekend school. And some of the things that were very positive for the students there in general and my children is we had a weekend school on Friday and on Sunday. And we charged a tuition on the weekend school, and the teachers got paid. And when the teachers were paid decent salary, there was consistency in the educational process for the weekend. was probably one of the largest weekend schools in the state of New York. But I remember having Quranic contests for the children, trophies for the children for memorization, summer camps. We had Islamic summer camps with Arabic and Quran, but on certain days we would take them swimming separately, like at the YWCA, and on another day we would take them on a field trip, either to some natural wildlife preservation or to some of the amusement parks. But there was always Quran contests, Arabic studies. I even remember driving from Albany, New York to Rockville, Maryland to take my children and their friends to the MENA conference. Sometimes you have to step out of the area to placate to your children. It's very important to give them the Quranic base first, and it kind of germinates when Allah says it's time to germinate. One of the most dangerous times for our students is when they go off to college. I sent my children off to college. They're quite adults, but let's just say most recently I asked my daughter she needed to do an assignment, and she's well in her 30s now. And I asked her, can you call the adhan and the iqamah? And she kind of looked at me, sucked her teeth, rolled her eyes, and she threw out that adhan and that iqamah like most brothers probably couldn't even do in the masjid. So in other words, the things that she learned in childhood stayed with her, even though she kind of shilly-shallied along the path in the American landscape. But when I asked her to call that adhan and that iqamah, she knew it very well. So, but you never know when the seeds of what you've planted will germinate, and sometimes it takes decades. And this is something that I heard, wallahi, from my own ears this week, her calling the adhan and the iqamah. And I didn't even know all these years, at least 10, 15 years, that she even knew it. Never mind, she had the cadence and everything, just like she was taught it in childhood. And her mom, which is me, is a Muslim convert. So you don't know how it's going to stick, but you have to give the children as much Islamic education now, and maybe it'll skip a generation, but it comes back. And that's just a sign from Allah of you don't know what's in someone's heart. Even though your kids look strange, went off to college weird, took careers and did things, I couldn't believe that child. She had that adhan in common. You don't know what's in their heart.
There's one other thing that I didn't address in my talk that I think is a serious problem in our ummah, and that's classism. And it's an issue that I really don't know how to tackle or how to address. But again, it was another issue that Prophet Muhammad ﷺ addressed, very much so, in his khutbahs and in his teachings. And one hadith sticks in my mind with regard to classism is that the Prophet ﷺ said that destruction of the ummah or of the community came when the hudud would be practiced against the underserved members of the community, but would not be practiced when it came to the affluent members of the community. So they would be, if they were rich and had money, basically they could buy their way out of getting punished for whatever it is that they did. And so this is a serious problem, because we have this lingers in our community, and we see it more prevalent in some communities than others, but it is another force that is creating division within the community. And, you know, I'm not quite sure that I have the answer with how to deal with that, other than we really need to understand that this is not appropriate, this is not allowed, and it's destroying our communities, destroying our people, it's destroying us. Yeah, I don't know if anybody has any thoughts to that. Yeah.
I know you're no longer with ISNA.
Yeah.
Something.
What?
Yeah, I understand that you're no longer with ISNA, and you have a lot of experience up on the hill with them. But it seems like what you're talking about is lack of infrastructure. I mean, an Islamic infrastructure, a model, a paradigm would be, because people are building, like you said, they're building masjids, but there's no program that is encompassing and holistic. As an indigenous Muslim myself, I often feel like there's no acknowledgement or respect given to any historical context of, you know, Islam, the history of Islam in this country. It didn't just start in the last few years, you know. I mean, it goes back to the foundation. And I think if we understood that Muslims are, you know, are integral part of the foundation of this republic. And I think we need to understand that. And if we understood that, I think that we can we're kind of operating out of context. So if we could all just take a step back and extricate ourselves from these schools of thought that tend to be very oppressive, that kind of present themselves as Islam, maybe we need to learn it, you know, learn it anew, and maybe we can learn it from the inside out instead of from the outside in. So I hope that makes sense.
Thank you, brother, for your comment. And actually, I'm going to say something right now. If you don't remember anything that I said today, please remember this, okay? Because I feel that this is very important. The immigrant community, you know, irrespective of when they came to the United States, whether it was in the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, you know, we have to recognize that the indigenous amongst our community are the African American community, okay? They were here long before any of us were here. They understand the platform, they understand the landscape, they understand the fabric, they understand the systems, they understand what it is to be American, and they understand what it is to be Muslim American, okay? They understand the influence of Islam on this country. And for those of us who choose to live in the United States, you know, whether, you know, I can't speak for everybody. I mean, I speak as a second-generation American-born California girl. So for me, I'm American, even though I have heritage from another country, but I'm American. And I appreciate being American. So, and I was born here. So, you know, and I want to just take you back to the lifetime of the Prophet ﷺ. When he and his companions migrated from Mecca to Medina, what was the first thing that Rasulullah ﷺ did? What was that?
Make the brotherhood between the
Exactly, thank you. He went to Medina and he didn't come in and say, okay, I'm in charge here, I'm the emir. No, that's not what he did. He sat down with the people who were there, the Ansars, right? And he created a community. He created a community not only with the Muslims who were there, the Ansars, but he made sure to build those bridges with the Jewish people of that community. So much so that he sat down and they wrote what? The Medinan Constitution. This is how he built the society. He brought the Jews and the Muslims and everybody together. He had to make sure that everybody's rights were acknowledged. Everybody had a stake there. He wasn't coming to come and take over, and I'm the boss, and no. And so for us, whether you identify as an immigrant, whether you identify as an American, we have to acknowledge our African American brothers and sisters who were here before us, and we need to start developing the ties with them because they were here first, and unless and until we start making that bridging those relationships with them, we are going to continue to be the underdogs, and we are going to continue to be marginalized within the United States. This is extremely, extremely important. So, I mean, I have so much to say here, and I know the time, we've probably gone way over the time, but this is, it bothers me when our brothers and sisters who were here first come into the immigrant masjids and don't feel like they belong and don't feel welcome. This is an absolute slap in the face to me as an American and to anybody who has to go through this. This is not right. And in addition to that, let me just say, it is bad enough that our African American Muslim brothers and sisters, they have to deal with the white supremacist, racist environment that we all live in. And Muslims, we're affected by it too. Don't think it's just them. I mean, look at the Islam, look at the vitriol and the anti-Muslim sentiments and rhetoric that's coming out of the Republican Party. That's not just African Americans that have to deal, and Latinos and all this, anti-Latino bigotry and immigration and all these issues. We're affected by this. So don't you think we would be much stronger if we all came together and stood up together, united? And I'm so sorry if I got passionate, but I really feel strongly about this. I feel that this is the biggest thing that is destroying our community. And it's something that is so easy to do. Reach across the aisle. Reach across the aisle. Say hello, my neighbor, my friend. Come on over. We're having dinner. Come have dinner at my house. I mean, it's something that's so easy. So easy.
Yes, and thank you, Sister Nadia. Actually, we still have until 9 o'clock, if you permit. Yes, any questions from the sister here?
Let me just say this.
Oh, yeah. Oh, maybe
We need
question.
to have the Muslim youth voice speak right now. Whatever is on their mind, no more old folks. I want to hear from these youth.
I totally agree.
Agree.
Anyone else? Be close to that. Any one of the girls would like to say something here?
No time for highlights now. So you can talk speak up, girl. Exactly what you're talking about is very important. We want to know what's on the
Yeah, any issues? How do you think that you would want to be more involved? How could they help you? I mean, those kind of things. What are the things that you're not yet like having or like being supported of? Maybe one of you would like to say something? This is a chance. Or maybe you could give it a thought, thinking.
I want them to speak.
Yes, I agree with you. Maybe I'll just give you a couple of moments and then take another question so you could think about that and come back to you. Is that a good idea?
Yeah.
Okay.
Assalamualaikum. I just want to preface this by Jazakallah khair, that what you said hit the mark. It's the truth. So I just got back from Brooklyn, and the masjids there are so friendly, so welcoming, African American. As soon as I walked in the door, they know I'm a traveler. It's like, you need food? We got a restaurant, choose which restaurant, and the masjid will provide for you. And I'm like, what? Like, there's 5 of us here. Like, it's okay, bismillah. And then it's just right away. The love was right there, it's right away. I didn't see that in the immigrant population, especially being Indonesians. We always have to fighting between the Arabs and the Desi, and we try to find our balance. Who are we exactly? And then the fight in between that, and then everybody's always like ask you where you're from, how long you've been Muslim, really, but you're Asian, and it's like a whole conversation just goes into like prodding privacy. But like, so, but subhanAllah, that you're right, because as soon as I went to Brooklyn, I was like, subhanAllah, this is awesome. I don't know why we don't hang out with our African American more often, because they have a lot of things to offer. They've been there for a long time. They've done a lot of work. So I guess my question is more on the fact that as youth, we want to do something. That's always there. We don't know what it is. We want to do something. But the problem is that we not caring. We don't care. Like at some point, just whatever. I can blend in. I know my friends enough. I don't have to be so involved in the community like our parents are, because our parents go there and do whatever. But that's not my thing. So what would you do with the youth? Like when they know they can't escape who they are. They want to be Muslim. They see the community is different, but the disfranchise, the racisms, the barriers between the new fobs and the older groups and all that. So we just like, at a certain point, we just like, I don't want, this is too big of a battle for me to handle. I just take care of myself. What would you say? How can we be active? Because I know we have voice. Like the girls, everybody got voice. They have something to say. But we feel like it doesn't make any difference. Like we talk for a while, that's it. Everything back to normal. Everybody's being racist again. Everybody's being secluded again. So what would you do? What would you say we should do first for that? So.
Thank you for your question. All those questions they're asking, by the way, they're just trying to figure out if you're Muslim enough. That's what, are you this? Are you really Muslim enough? Your question is a loaded question. So the short answer is come to our Youth Leadership Institute.
What is that?
It's just, if you're ready to sign up, let me know. We can sign you up. That's the short answer. All these issues that we're talking about today is not something that's going to get solved overnight. It's not something that we're going to wake up tomorrow. We're going to say Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, and it's going to be a new day, but it's not going to be a new day for us. It's going to be the same day. So transformation is what we need. Reformation is what we need. And things like that, if, again, let's look at the life of the Prophet ﷺ. He was a prophet for 23 years, right? In the first 13 years, what did he preach? Tawheed, la ilaha illallah, la ilaha illallah. He wanted to make sure that Tawheed was so strong in the community that there was no wavering, there was not even a doubt. That's how, imagine for 13 years, all he preached was Tawheed. And again, I hear things that really even, I don't even know if I should bring this up. I hear things from our own community that really comes, that really shakes this notion of Tawheed. And it's an issue between men and women, where, I've even heard some crazy fabricated hadith that, something like, if the Prophet would have had someone bow to, a human bow to another human, it would be a wife to her husband. Has anybody ever heard this before? Just the notion, thinking, I'm not a sheikh, I don't give fatwas, I don't do any of that. But just knowing what I know about Allah and His majesty and how there is nothing like Him, and how He wanted to make sure that we understood who He was, and how that there's creation and then there's the Creator. There is nothing like the Creator. There's nothing. He wanted to make sure that the Prophet spent 13 years preaching Tawheed, and yet we come up with statements like, imagine just what we know from the Quran and from Allah. Imagine that even the idea that some human being could even remotely be idolized like we worship Allah. And that's our statement. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, ashhadu anna Muhammad. There's no deity. So what does that mean when we say if? Do you think that the Prophet would have made such a statement? Do you think that the Prophet, what does the Quran say? The Prophet, what? Ati'u Allah and Ati'u Rasul. Obey Allah and obey the Prophet, because the Prophet could never have disobeyed Allah, ever. Not even remotely, not even a little bit, not even with one word. So this is the kind of stuff, this is the thinking, this is the transformation that we have. We have to transform our minds. We have to transform our language, even the things that we say. We have to be very careful that these, and we've been talking about culture. Culture has really infiltrated our deen. We need to go back and examine our culture. Where in our culture are we transgressing the limits of Allah? Because we are. In our culture, we are transgressing the limits of Allah. So we need to go back we need to go back to our Quran, and we need to open the book, and we need to see what lessons we missed, right? And we need to undo, just like they did during the advent of Islam. The Prophet undid the harmful, he eradicated the bad practices of culture, and he kept the ones that are good. And he taught, and he guided. So this is what we need, and it takes work, okay? And as for the youth, all I can say is come to our Youth Leadership Institute.
We do our best trying to teach the hearts and the minds and the people, but then sometimes there's no response, and you're the only one that stands.
Well, just make dua for us that we can, I mean, we can only do our best, and that's what Allah, we can strive. We have to, striving happens every day. It doesn't happen once and then we leave it alone. No, you have to strive. That's what jihad is, right? The struggle. Striving to internalize, make yourself a better person. That's the one thing that Allah asks from us, right? He asks many things of us, but I'm just saying from the nafs standpoint, He asks us to continually struggle against the nafs, continually improving ourselves to be a better person. When we raise up from salah, we should be a better person than when we were before we made the salah. And that's how we should be. Iman never stays the same. It goes up and it goes down, right? And what we need to do is we need to just keep practicing to elevate, 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 elevate. And we need to examine ourselves. You should look at yourself like, okay, you know, the new year comes around. What type of a person was I last year? So this is January 2016, you know, keep a journal. What was I doing last year, January 2015? Was I praying my nawafil? Was I doing extra fast? Was I helping my neighbor? Was I trying to feed the poor? You know, there's a lot that we as a Muslim community can do just right here in Maryland or even in Silver Spring, that we can better our surroundings, right? There's so much, and that was what the brother was talking about, investing. We have to invest. We have to invest in ourselves. We have to invest in our community, not invest in the walls. We have to invest in our people.
And girls, just raise your hand whenever you're ready.
I want to hear this from the youth now.
Yeah. You're ready? Okay.
Excellent.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Zafira. I'm 15 years old and I'm a sophomore in high school. My question is, I'm just going to say this. You talked about how a lot of women, a lot of different races are being discriminated in masjids. Another group that I feel is being really discriminated are the youth. Since we are really young and we're still trying to learn from the adults and everything like that, we also have really good ideas for the masjid. And since we come here every single week, we're still here, we're listening to you talk and everything like that. I feel like we should be more a part of it, but the thing is, a lot of adults don't really consider our ideas, and they don't really realize that we are a part of it. Not to put anything on, but the thing is, we just want to become a better and bigger part of the masjid, but we just don't know how to.
Okay, so I have a question. That was a great question, and thank you for having the courage to ask the question and to say that. My first question to you would be, have you made an appointment with the leadership or with anybody I'm not sure what the structure here or how the masjid is run, but is it the imam or the board?
We have a couple of youth coordinators who are also like very, very helpful here. But the thing is, they try their best to imply a lot more like events and everything specifically for the youth and also for the adults too. But none of like the adults really like once again like consider us to be like one of like the biggest factors. They mostly like try and like reconsider the adults more and then have the youth be like the second like option.
Okay, so let me just tell you, I'm not at the center a lot, but one of the things, and when you say adults, I don't know who you're talking about, but one of the things that I've heard from the leadership is their great concern about the youth. Okay, and I'm, you can consider me an outsider. They are very interested in doing something and I've heard this multiple times. I've been to the center several times to attend different events, and every time I come, it's we need to do something for the youth, right? We need to do something, can you come talk to our youth about this? Can we organize this? So my question is, or I'm going to put something back on you. I think it's great that you want to do something, and I think it's great that you can express your concerns about not being heard. However, I would encourage you to take the right channels. And you can do a number of things. Number one, you can write an email to the imam, write an email to the board, write an email to the youth coordinators, or write one email and CC everybody on that email and say, we are a group of Indonesian 15-year-olds and we have something to say. Okay, can we organize a meeting? Can we sit down and have a face-to-face, right? Or in your email, you can say, these are our concerns. A, this. B, this. C, this. I would like to schedule a date for us to sit down and talk about it. So that's one way. The other thing, you can come and maybe you can find out who the key person is or the point person who coordinates. And I'm not talking about the youth coordinators. Like when you come and you talk with the youth coordinators, okay, so who is the person that the youth coordinator coordinates with on the board, in the leadership? So you need to bridge that, because it's very possible that the youth coordinator is not getting the message to either the imam or to the board, okay? So you have to make sure that your communication channels actually gets all the way through, okay? That it's not stopping at some point, okay? So that's another thing that I would do. And then I would also get together with your contemporaries and maybe before meeting with the board or the leadership and saying, hey, what's important to us? What is it that we want to do? So have a goal in mind, have an objective in mind, and write it down, because they will take you seriously when you have things written. If you just come in and say, hey, we just want to do da-da-da, no. You need to have it written down. Write it down and write your specific objectives, your goals down, and say this is what we want to do, this is when we want to do it, like give specific dates. This is who we, to cover all the W's, when, why, how, what, and bring it forth. Bring forth a proposal, like it's a real, business proposal. I would find it very hard to believe that such an open community such as this would not accept such a proposal. So, but you have to do your homework too. You have to really organize yourselves and have a clear set of objectives of what you're trying to accomplish, and then you have to connect with the leadership, and then possibly even propose, say, we would like to have a representative on one of the committees so that you can have a voice. You can have a voice either on the board or on one of the committees. Again, I don't know the structure of this mosque, but just keep asserting yourself, and don't be disappointed to hear no, because no just means not now. It can come later. It's possible that right now is not a good time. So don't think that no is, oh, they don't like us, they don't want us here. No, I've heard, believe me, I've heard no more than I've heard yes in my life. So just no means not now, and you know, a possibility for another time.
Thank you, Zafira. And I think one of the things that maybe I could also suggest is that there's like a musta, like what is the yearly General Assembly of Imam, and I think like I've been attending that for years, more than 13, 14 years. Youth is not represented in that forum, and I think maybe it would be a good idea, like I think from the takeaway from this conversation, to individually invite them and make them be a part of one of the working committees. Perhaps a brother could chime in.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I'd like to say thank you very much, Sister Nadia. Well, first of all, for coming and really have a very fruitful discussion for all of us, for women, also for men here, and for youth. I just want to address the one of the comments from the youth. It's I think it's true that it's been hard for them to be considered or to be heard by leadership. But I like to say the same the other way around. It's been hard for us to be heard by the youth as well. So I think the yeah. So the key here, I think we need to highlight in this. Communication is very important. So we've been having live communication in both sides. But I think the leadership has been assigned representative from youth. So you guys need to talk more and voice more your concern, everything. So we like to hear. And even I capture what Sister Nadia offered to us, and I offer you on the spot here. So are you willing to participate in the Youth Leadership Institute that Sister Nadia offered? So I offer the youth right now. So that will be, I think it will be great program for you guys. So leadership really support you guys. So that's as you know about that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brother Ahmad. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think to just go back to like the point about women and then inclusiveness, I was wondering if you could share more a little bit about like what you think is the best practice of like, you know, the mosque all around the US, and then how do you see like improvements that should be made, like, you know, in any mosque or maybe in this mosque?
Well, I can't speak for other mosques. I can't, you know, every community is different. And really, personally, I feel that that the issue of women and the understanding of relationships between men and women has somewhat been distorted for reasons of, I would say, suspicion. I don't know how else to say this. For example, you know, if a brother says Salam Alaikum to a sister, you know, he fears that, oh my gosh, they might think that, you know, I like this sister, or, you know, or if a sister talks to a brother, they're, you know, and there's a very clear distinction here between the gender relationship between men and women. Again, and I look at the gender relationships during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, the women were in the masjid. Aisha and Bilal used to have conversations, but they were respectful conversations. They were conversations that were appropriate. This whole extreme ideology that men and women cannot exist in the same space, cannot say Salamu Alaikum to each other. This is not part of our deen. This is not part of who we are. I mean, I've been in situations where a brother would literally walk right by. I'd be standing with my husband, and the brother would say Salamu Alaikum to my husband and wouldn't even look at me or give me salams. And I was like, Why? What's the point? This doesn't do anything. I mean, salam, we say salam is for God. You know, when you say salam alaikum to somebody, this is, you're greeting the person, but it's the greeting because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has ordered us to give salams between each other, okay? So, but there is an adab, there is etiquette that we have, and as long as we keep the etiquette, there's nothing wrong with being in the masjid. I mean, look at all of us here together. We're sitting in the same space. You know, there's a gate here, but everybody can see, right? Everybody can see, and I think it's great. It's great that we can all exist in one space without feeling like we can't be together, we can't be a community together. Okay? Yeah, I understand that some people do not follow the adab, do not follow the proper protocols of how to act and engage. But that's not, I feel because of that, because some people have gone to one extreme, our community has been polarized to another extreme. But this is moving away from what, the way that the Sahabas used to exist. With one another. So I mean, for me, I think this is beautiful. I like that everybody can sit together. You know, you have a gate here that's a barrier, and it's really just a division to show that this is the brothers section and this is the sisters section. For me, where I have a problem sometimes is when the masajid have like a curtain, and you cannot see anything. You cannot see the imam. You don't know, I mean, if the microphone system shuts off, and this has happened before, we'll be in prayer, and the mic system goes out, and we cannot see. We don't know if they're in ruku', we don't know if they've gone down for sujood, and we're just sitting there stuck. We're like, well, what do we do? You know, so now broke up the prayer, you know, so I believe in respectful dialogue, and I believe in having inclusive communities, and I don't feel that there's a need to completely, have a, like what they do in Saudi Arabia. I mean, women and men are completely separate in their societies to the point where cousins don't know their own cousins. And I have relatives that live in Saudi, they say, we don't know our cousins. You don't know your cousins? They said, if we see them, we don't know them. We don't even know what they look like. I don't know how this is helping to build strong, healthy families. I don't know. I mean, that's their culture. And I'm thinking of an example of, women during the time of the Prophet used to go out on the battlefield and fight jihad. They used to be on the battlefield with the Prophet. One woman even used her body to shield the Prophet, right? So how is it that we cannot say salam alaikum to each other? I don't know. And there are many communities that the women and the men, they will not, even if the families know each other, they will not give salams. They will not give salams to each other. But yet, the hadith says, spread love amongst each other. And the way to spread love amongst each other is give each other the salams. I mean, this is our first right, just as Muslims. But I think this is a great setting here. I really like it, and I think it's productive and very conducive.
Well, thank you. Maybe one very quick last question before. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Nadia. I just want to maybe offer you some suggestions, sister. I think I met you several times, but there is none, you've been talking as the government outreach or something. It was very nice to see a woman to sit there, talk about men, about some more deep issue, not just the woman thing, this kind of thing. I just want to give a suggestion for you that, because you already start with the youth leadership, right? How about if you also start some, group discussion just for the woman? Because what I feel is in many masjid, many masjid in America, in many of the board of trustees of masjid, usually they put the woman there as to see, okay, we have the woman at the board, but they don't really do strategic thinker. They are not strategic thinker. They don't do strategic planning or something like that. They just do the manual, like running the event, running around, things like that. So I just want to see more women to be in the position of doing the strategic thinking, but it's not easy to find a woman like that. So I don't know if this is a suggestion, if you can, start something like that.
Oh, sister. So I have to tell you, even in my roles, in the different roles, in the different organizations that I've worked with, a lot of times I find myself as the only female at the table with all these men. And if I didn't assert myself, if I didn't say, hey, I have a suggestion, nobody would pay attention to me. The men wouldn't even look at me, they wouldn't even consider that I had anything intelligent to say. It's sad. It's sad, and a lot of times I find myself, saying, hey, can you consider this? Can we do this? I know Sister Jamila knows I'm always kind of inserting myself. It's something that we have to do, we have to overcome. And it's not easy, but I would say just be persistent. Continue to voice your concerns, continue to voice your, what it is that you would like or you would like to see. And I always say, if you can get together with like-minded sisters who feel the same way, I mean, together you guys could have more, if you come by yourself, you're one person, but if you come with more people and say, hey, we would like to do this, we would like to have, a voice here, we would like to see this thing, it's just a matter of, sometimes I would have to say something 20 times before I'm heard, before my suggestion, even gets taken serious. And let me just say this one thing. I know the brothers are probably not going to like to hear this, but oftentimes I would be at the table and I would say something. I would give an idea, and nobody would even hear my idea. They would carry on with the conversation. And then 10 minutes later, a brother would say the same thing that I said, and he would take credit for the idea. And I'm just like, did I not just say that 10 minutes ago? I'm like, okay, if he wants credit for it, that's fine. But it's the nature of how our dynamics are. That's not how it was during the Prophet's time. I'm just saying this is who we are today, and we have to work. We have to continually work to make better relations between ourselves, between us and other communities, between this masjid and other masjids, between internally with the community and the board. We have to keep striving to make the relationships stronger inside and outside, and with the broader community as well. That's just what we have to do.
Thank you so much, Sister Nadia. This has been a great conversation, and Alhamdulillah, there are so many takeaways. But I think I'd like to point out some of the things for the youth, especially here that to get them more involved, we could have like a robust Girl Scout program, get youth more involved in the planning of the masjid, and then encourage them to take the right channel, email, and have a more robust conversation. And hopefully we could have a part of the Youth Leadership Institute training programs. And also in terms of for women, alhamdulillah, this is actually, we have a mutual space, and also we, with the more respectful dialogue, and also promoting respectful conversation, inshallah, we will continue to improve our community and our mosque together. And in terms of management, some of the things that were mentioned was leadership has to be represented from the different background and part of the community, and transparency of where the money are, and also have a non-judgmental masjid. And last but not least, I think it all boils down to muhasabah, or continue to self-reflect and transform our mind, our language, to increase and elevate our iman, inshallah.
And one more last point, which came to mind when you mentioned starting Girl Scouts. If you're going to take on a new initiative as well, what I would do is I would look around in the community and see who else is doing something like this. It might behoove with you to join hands or join forces with another nearby community. For example, Girl Scouts is not an easy thing to do. It requires a lot of time, and it requires a lot of certifications, and it requires a large investment. But if you can get together with another community who already has a Muslim Girl Scouts, maybe the girls could join hands together and do it together. And then you're saving time, resources, and it really takes a lot to get something like that started. So I'm not one for reinventing the wheel. Before I started the Youth Leadership Institute, I looked around to see if there were any programs like this already going, because I didn't want to start something if it already existed. I didn't find anything anywhere that was similar to this or even close to this. So that's when we said, okay, let's get this started. So it's oftentimes, if you have an idea, search, go do a Google search, ask around, ask the different communities, is anybody doing something like this before you start it on your own? Because when you join hands with another community, you're only going to be that much stronger.
Yes, thank you. I think that's a good, also input, Mas Amang, Brother Amang, that, maybe we could have like a person in charge to, if we're going to explore like something like a Girl Scout, and then, just build in and then collaborate with the existing one. And also another suggestion from Sister before, just to have like a parking lot issues of some of the things that we discussed tonight, especially about the issue about youth and women. Thank you, and let's end this this beautiful discussion, inshallah, with reading Surah Al-Asr together. Thank you so much again, Sister Nadia. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin. Thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.